Welcome back to Management Development Unlocked. I am very glad that you're here. Please remember to support the show by subscribing, commenting, and sharing. Today, I have Matt Abrahams with me. Matt, welcome to the show. You have a superb background, so please tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Well, thank you. I am very excited to have our conversation. I am Matt Abrahams. I'm a lecturer at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, where I teach strategic communication and have done so for, I think, 13 years now. I'm an author, just wrote a new book, Think Faster, Talk Smarter, and a podcast host, much like yourself. I host the podcast Think Fast, Talk Smart, which is all about communication, which is really what I'm all about. I'm a passionate person about communication, and I love helping people find their confidence in their voice so that they can speak up without freaking out.
That is amazing. And this is germane to me because, obviously I'm a professional talker, but I can either think fast or I can talk smart. I can't do both. It's like, patting your head and rubbing your belly at the same time. Doesn't happen. So I'm interested to see where we go in our conversation.
Excellent. Happy to share, and perhaps there'll be some ideas about ways you can do both soon.
Good. All right. Well, this is straight off your website. So for those playing the home game, I strongly recommend that you take a look at Matt's website, mattabrahams.com. And on it, you say that effective communication is critical to your personal and professional success. Can you please put that in context for a new manager, which is our primary audience here?
Well, any new manager, and I can think back to when I was a manager. I worked in industry for about 10 years and managed many teams, very large, some and small others. When you're a manager, you are constantly communicating. I think fundamentally, the way we communicate is the way we lead. I like to say that communication is operationalized leadership. It is through communication that we lead. And a lot of the time when we think of communication, we think about the formal pitches and presentations we give, the meetings we run, maybe even the emails we write. But in reality, most of your communication happens in the moment. It's spontaneous. Somebody asks you a question, you have to answer. Somebody asks for feedback or needs feedback in that moment. You have to introduce a new person to the team. These are all spontaneous acts, and it is critical that we learn to do them confidently and concisely so that we can be maximally effective.
All right. Well, that is a beautiful setup for where we're going next. And I agree, it's these moment-to-moment opportunities we have to chat with folks where, you've got less than the time it takes for an elevator to go one floor.
Right.
To make a point and do it quickly and do it well. So this is going to be really interesting, I think, to folks listening. So let's talk a little bit about how a new manager can avoid feeling ill-equipped, anxious, and awkward when either communicating bad news or when talking to someone from the C-suite. So you're walking along and suddenly you bump into the COO. How do you avoid being tongue-tied?
Yeah, so many of us get nervous in high-stakes situations. A couple things. One, I want to deal with the physiological response that we have. That's that fight or flight response we have. The single best thing we know based on research to do is to take some deep belly breaths. So in that moment, deep belly breath, if you've ever done yoga or Tai Chi, you're filling your lower abdomen, and then make your exhale slightly longer than your inhale. It's during the exhale that the magic happens. So take a deep breath in and a longer exhale out, and that'll help calm you down. Second, when we're in those moments, we have to remind ourselves that the goal is to connect. It's not to be perfect. So I say connection over perfection. Many of us in those moments, we want to do it right. We want to say the perfect thing. And I'm here to tell you, as somebody who's studied this for decades, there is no right way to communicate. There are better ways and worse ways, but there is no one right way. We put so much pressure on ourselves to do it right, to give the right answer, to give the best feedback, to be the most interesting in small talk. That actually works against us. It's a cognitive bandwidth issue. Your brain only has so many resources. And if part of those resources are dedicated to hyper vigilant evaluation of what you're saying and how you're saying it, you only have limited resources then to focus on what you're saying. So when you run into the boss and the boss says, "Hey, what are you working on?" Simply answer the question. Don't say, "I better frame it in the best way I can so I can." That gets too much into your head. Connect rather than trying to be perfect, and it makes a big difference. latter part of the book talks about very specific situations you find yourself in and provides you with structures to help you. I believe very firmly that the best way to communicate is in a structured way. And many neuroscientists I've interviewed suggest the same thing. Our brain does not do a good job with lists of information. We have to structure it, a beginning, a middle, and an end, a logical connection. And I provide lots of different structures people can take advantage of. So in both circumstances you shared with me, I would suggest that people use the simple 3-question structure I provide. What, so what, now what? So when your boss asks you, hey, what's going on? What's something you're working on? Tell them the what, tell them the so what, tell them the now what. The what is what you're working on. The so what is why it's important to the business or the team. And then the now what is what comes next. If somebody asks you for feedback, the what is your feedback, the so what is why it's important, the now what is what you'd like them to do differently. So by putting ourselves in the moment of connection, by reminding ourselves that we have a structure we can rely on, and by taking that deep breath, we can actually get through these very stressful situations.
What, so what, and now what? I'm gonna put that in a Post-it note and stick it on my
Yeah, absolutely. I have lots of articles and other ways of reminding yourself of that if you go to my website.
Perfect. Then, since we're talking about communicating, let's talk specifically about the art of listening. So, what are the 4 pillars of active listening according to Matt Abrahams?
Well, let me give you first the bottom line, which is we're not very good at it. We listen just enough to get the gist of what people are saying, and then we immediately begin rehearsing, evaluating, judging, planning. So we don't listen very well.
I'm sorry, I was zoned out there. I'm sorry.
Yes, I know. I have to tell you that whenever my wife hears me teach listening skills, she'll come afterwards and say, you don't practice what you teach. So I'm still working on this as well. To me, there are 3 things we have to do to be better at listening. Step number 1, and they come from a colleague of mine. His name's Collins Dobbs. He teaches a class at Stanford's Business School on crucial, critical conversations and has this methodology, which I'm borrowing because I think it applies so well to listening. 3 things: pace, space, grace. We have to slow ourselves down. As a new manager, you are likely incredibly busy. You've got lots going on, and you're trying to juggle being a good manager and getting all of your work done. We have to slow down. Listening happens when we're slow, not when we're moving fast. Second, pace and then space. We have to physically give ourselves space. Move to a place where you can hear and that there aren't distractions. The other part of space is free up the mental space, the cognitive bandwidth to really be present. We listen best when we are present. And then finally, grace. Grace has to do with giving yourself permission to not only listen to what is said, but how it is said, where it is said. Context matters. And then finally, with grace, we have to look inside and listen to our intuition. When somebody shares something with us, what does that bring up for us? Is there some connection or feeling that we have that might help us? So if somebody says, I'd like your feedback, and we listen, we might notice they're not looking at us when they ask. They're speaking more quietly than they normally do. Some intuition says, I'm not sure feedback is what's really wanted here. Maybe it's support. So you could then ask a clarifying question. Say, can I give you some feedback about what worked or what didn't work? Or do you just want me to listen to some of the concerns you have? So that intuition plus the giving yourself space to notice other things allows you to listen better.
One of the things I talk about a lot, and it's actually the first and longest chapter in my book, is empathy and how very important empathy is. So that kind of maps to your point about grace. And
absolutely. And I was just going to add, most of us in our roles suffer from 2 curses, the curse of knowledge and the curse of passion. We know too much about what we're talking about, and we're really passionate about it. And the only antidote to the curse of knowledge and curse of passion is empathy, as you rightly say in your book. We need to listen from the other person's perspective. We need to understand what's important to them, and that's how we can add the most value.
Yeah, it's so important. And Yeah, I had a brilliant thing to say and I've completely lost it. But anyway, I just
No worries.
I think your points are well taken, and I love that whole idea of space. Was it
Pace, space, grace.
space, grace? That's wonderful. Good stuff. All right, then changing tack a little bit. Let's talk about FOMO. So, how can a new manager manage fear of missing out? FOMO.
Yeah, so I had the pleasure on my podcast to interview Patrick McGinnis. Patrick is the guy who came up with the idea of FOMO a few decades ago. Fear of missing out looms large in many of our lives, myself included. I struggle with this a lot. And we have to think about how we can be present and appreciate what's going on in the moment. I am that classic person when I am at a cocktail party or some kind of meet and greet. I am always wondering who's having the better conversation. Where's the person I should be thinking about? And in the book, in my new book, I refer to this as swiping right or left too frequently. You have to be present. In that moment, there is opportunity. And we have to think through and be focused on that potential opportunity in that moment rather than worrying about what could be. And I am still struggling with this, but we have to think through the value we're getting in the moment. There is opportunity, there's learning, there's potential collaboration in that moment. And as a new manager, part of your job is to be supportive of the people that work for you. And you need to be present and listen and not be worried about the other meeting you're missing or the other potential thing you could be doing. It's hard. It's hard. You know, the biggest lesson I learned as a new manager was I really wanted to be liked. I wanted everybody to like me. The managers I respected the most were the ones I liked the most. But it turns out, for me at least, that it wasn't the liking that was the right goal because people walked all over me. They took advantage of me. I took on more work. Really, it was to be respected. And once a mentor helped me realize that my goal was not to be liked, but to be respected, great things happened. It turns out we tend to like people we respect. And so by pushing back, by defining clear boundaries, it allowed me to actually do my job better and reduce some of the FOMO that I was experiencing prior. So FOMO looms large in my life, but it's something that I think we can all learn to manage.
Yeah, I totally agree. I get that a lot. I mean, as an entrepreneur, if I'm not working, I'm not earning. And,
Right.
taking a break of any kind used to drive me nuts. Weekends, where should be upstairs with my family, I'd sneak back down here to my office and just do a little something. Or on vacations, keep checking in, keep checking in, keep checking in. It's like, you know what? You need to rest and recharge. So, the FOMO while you're on vacation or taking a weekend, that needs to go away because you have to rest and recharge. And then the biggest gift you can give somebody is your attention. So if you can give the gift of your attention to the people who are in front of you now, that's just going to help that relationship, and the other pieces will fill themselves in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I still need to learn that lesson. You could teach me a lot. Turning myself off and not working all the time is really hard for me. But you're right. You can get burned out. You can lose your passion. You can lose your focus. It's important to set those boundaries for sure.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not putting myself forward as an exemplar. I still take my laptop with me on vacations most of the time, but it's at least being intentional. It's like, okay, the laptop is with me, but I'm only going to use it for an hour in the morning, and then I'm going to fold it, shut it off, put it away. So,
Yeah, and yet that's a boundary. So I think that's good.
yep, yep. All right. Then the last question I have for you in this section is, how can a new manager write better for busy readers?
I can see you've been listening to some of my podcasts. So I had the great pleasure of interviewing Todd Rogers of Harvard, and he wrote a book on exactly that topic, how to write for busy readers. And again, it's about empathy. We often, when we write, we think from and this is true of all communication, we think from our perspective, what do I want to get across? And we need to really flip that. What does the reader or the listener need from us in our communication? So it's really about understanding what's relevant and important to them, and then keeping that information really focused Focus so that it's concise and clear. The more we do in our lives, the more necessary it is to be concise and clear. How do we get that clarity? Couple things. One, know what's relevant to your audience and build your messaging around that. Have a clear goal. What are you trying to achieve? It's shocking to me when I ask people, what's your goal? And people are like, my goal, I just want to get information across. No, you have to be more specific. To me, a goal has three parts: information, emotion, and action. What do you want your audience to know? How do you want them to feel? And what do you want them to do as a result of that information? So with that know, feel, do, you can begin to focus and prioritize what you say. The bottom line is this. My mother has this wonderful saying that I try to live up to in my communication. Tell me the time, don't build me the clock. So if you want to get your messages across for busy readers or busy listeners, it has to be relevant, focused on a goal, and you have to give just the right information. How do you determine what's right? You should be focus grouping your important messages. So if it's not spontaneous, if I've got some time to plan, I'm testing it out with people. At Stanford's Business School, we are big proponents of minimally viable product design, MVP, agile development, which is all about rapid prototyping, getting feedback from your users, and iterating. Your communication should follow that same pattern, and that's how you get concise and clear for your busy audience.
Oh, I love it. MVP. Yeah,
Yep.
good stuff.
I trademark penning, MVC, minimally viable communication.
Yeah, there you go. I'm reminded, I can't remember who said this. I bet you'll remember, but a famous writer once said, I'm sorry I wrote so much. If I had had more time, I would have written less, or I would have said
Absolutely.
less.
That was Mark Twain.
Was it Mark Twain? Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's a very famous Mark Twain quote about how we need to focus in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I still use some of his quotes in other places as well. I just think he was a fantastic writer and personality. Well, let's talk a little bit about you. And specifically, I'd like to talk about your book, which is conveniently over your shoulder. So, yeah, mine is hidden behind me.
Yes.
Other side of the bookcase. So tell us about Think Faster, Talk Smarter. Tell us all about your book.
Well, so the book is all about how to be a better speaker in the moment. So many of us, when we are communicating, it is that in the moment communication that is critical, as we talked about earlier. The book is divided into two parts. The first part focuses on a methodology, and that methodology is 6 steps that really helps take people through what it takes to have the skills and experience and mindset to be a better, more effective in the moment communicator. The first 4 steps in the process are about mindset, and the second 2 steps are about the actual messaging. The second part of the book is about 6 specific in the moment spontaneous speaking situations that we encounter, and advice and guidance and particular structures to help. So it's answering questions, giving feedback, introducing yourself, giving a toast or tribute, pitching, small talk. These are all circumstances and situations that many of us find incredibly challenging. And so it's designed, hopefully, to help people feel better in their spontaneous communication.
You know, I wonder, as you were talking, I was wondering, do you have a TED Talk planned for this?
So yes. So there's actually a talk already out there that's been around for a little bit, and it's done quite well. I have done 2 TEDx talks, and then I have this other big talk. So if anybody goes to YouTube and types my name in, you're going to find something. One of the talks is on anxiety management, and then the other 2 touch on this topic.
We've got to talk. I'm thinking about applying to give a TED Talk. So,
oh, great! I'd love to. I have coached a number of TED speakers.
Have you?
And I'd be happy to talk to you about that experience. Okay. It takes a lot of work, but it's a wonderful experience.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard both of those things. So
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. Well, now I'm embarrassed that I didn't actually go look for your TED Talk before.
Oh, don't be embarrassed. It's all right. No worries.
All right. Thank you. Well, we have a little bit of time, so I'd like to dig in a little bit more about you, if you don't mind.
Sure, please. Go right ahead.
Nothing terribly embarrassing here.
Good.
The first question is, if you could interview anyone, so you're in my seat, if you could interview anyone, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Absolutely. So I'm asked this question a lot. There's so many people I would love to interview. The person I am most fascinated by relative to the topic I've written on is Robin Williams. I'm a big fan of comedy. I love Robin Williams comedy. And he was somebody who was able to speak amazingly quickly on the spot. His ability to improvise, to connect to the audience, to make a moment in the moment was just amazing. And I would love to talk to him about his process, his what goes on for him, what he thinks, and how he defines success in that. I would absolutely be fascinated. I was fortunate enough many years ago, decades ago, to see him perform live. And I'll tell you, I only got half of his jokes because I was so busy laughing. And my stomach hurt, I kid you not, for 2 days afterwards. So I'd be fascinated to interview him.
Oh, he was a genius. Such a shame that he's gone. Yeah, I got introduced to Robin Williams. I don't think I was even 10 yet. And the album I listened to, Reality, What a Concept. I mean, that was not appropriate for somebody my age. But I thought he was hilarious, even in my youth, my very young youth. Yes. Okay. Well,
Agreed.
moving on. Favorite vacation spot and why? You already live in a great vacation spot, but tell us more.
Well, thank you. Yes, living in Northern California is fantastic. My favorite place in the entire world is Sydney, Australia. There is an old gnarly tree in the Sydney Botanical Gardens that is across from the Harbour Bridge and the Sydney Opera House. You have a beautiful view of both. So my place of zen is to have the tree behind me and looking at the two. I like to run, so I'll run in the Botanical Gardens. I'll get to the tree. I'll stop. I'll sit, appreciate the view. It is fantastic. So yes, Sydney, Australia is my favorite place to travel.
Oh, I actually lived there for a couple of years.
Okay. So do you know where I'm talking? You know the Botanical Garden right next door to the Opera House?
I don't think I spent any time at the Botanical Gardens. I know where they are, but I was going to say,
next time you go, you got to go through it. It's beautiful.
Okay, next time I go, I'll go find that tree, and next time you go, climb the Harbour Bridge.
Yes. Oh, really? I've seen people do that. I'm scared of heights. I would rather give a presentation in front of 1 million people than climb heights.
Okay. All right. Not for everybody.
Not for everybody, but thank you. I hear it's fun. A lot of people I know who do it love it. Not for me.
It was a hoot. It was the last thing I did before I moved back home.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So my third question here is, where would you most like to travel aside from Australia?
I have always been enamored. So I would love to travel many places. I have a huge curiosity about Norway and the fjords. For some reason, those fjords, they look gorgeous. I'm really interested in seeing the fjords of Norway. I like just saying the word fjord, but I'm really interested to see the fjords. Have you been there?
I haven't, but I live in Little Norway. So the town I live in, Polsbo, is a Norwegian settlement. And there's a big lodge here called the Sons of Norway. And folks settled here from Norway because it looks almost identical to the fjords of Norway, the real ones.
So I can get there more quickly just by going up to Washington. Okay, yeah, I got it.
Come on up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I like it.
Downtown Polsbo is like a little mini European town. The way the buildings are set up right next to each other and the architecture and all of that. And yeah, they take their Nordic heritage seriously here. So it's worth a look.
I definitely will look into it.
Cool. And then last question for you, sir, before we wrap it up. What brings you the most joy in your life?
I love being with family and friends. And if I can do it outside on a sunny day, perhaps on a hike, that brings me true joy. Just engaged in deep, meaningful conversation is what I really enjoy doing. I'm an extrovert, so it had to involve other people, but it's really just being immersed in meaningful conversation and connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and where you live, not far from Stanford, you've got so many beautiful places to hike. So,
as you well know, that's true.
I spent a lot of time in those hills. Yeah, excellent. Yep. Great. Well, Matt, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. How can people find you?
Thank you. I enjoyed it as well. You asked some very meaningful questions. Thank you. The best way to reach me is mattabrahams.com. You can find everything I do there, including a link to the podcast, Think Fast, Talk Smart, and the book, Think Faster, Talk Smarter. Not that creative on names, as you can tell. And I'm a big user of LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect to you that way too.
All right. Excellent. Well, thanks for listening. Please subscribe, comment, share, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Pick up my new book, Lead Like a Pro, The Essential Guide for New Managers. It's available on Amazon, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.